We continue, of course, here in studio. We'll take your WhatsApps as well on 072-110-5584 if you'd like to comment. You still have time to give us a call as well, 0105946010. Prof, Vuyo Zungula says he even, at some point at the beginning they used the word puppetry. I wonder what you make of that.
Yeah.
The fact that Zungula talks about how the responsibility of dealing with the misinformation was something that he feels was handed over to Steenhuisen, Johann Rupert, and that there wasn't a voice for or about black South Africans. Is that important?
Look, first we have to understand President Ramaphosa did not go there to toy-toy.
Yes.
This was a diplomatic mission. It's about investment. It's about reviving the economy. Unless we revive the economy, that black person that Mr. Zungula feels was left out would have nothing to survive on. President Ramaphosa did the best that he could. There was misinformation. From the very word go, if you watch the pre-lunch briefing that they had, he was clear to President Trump that I am here to catalyze investment, to catalyze trade relations. As each time that Trump tried to pull him away from the central point, he would bring him back and say, we are here to deal with the trade relations and investment. And him taking the people that he took there was a show of force. He's a general going with all his Cape Towns to say, these are the people that I'm leading South Africa with. I have both black and white people in my camp. They will speak. I can't be the only one speaking. I can't monopolize the podium. I will allow them to speak so that you can see that we have a functioning government which is multiracial, which is diverse, and I've brought them here. As for the golfers, unfortunately, President Ramaphosa requested the meeting, and Trump said, bring those people. It's part of the diplomatic give and take that happens behind the scenes for one to obtain audience. It's just, in this case, we know how the audience was obtained. And was the messaging that we would have expected? Perhaps not, because some of the golfers spoke, and you could tell that this one is just speaking out of frustration following the misinformation that Elon Musk and Trump have been perpetuating on X, former Twitter. But I think Ramaphosa did the best that he could under the circumstances. He focused on the key things. Because remember, AGOA is about to be negotiated for renewal. He could not do that without first dealing with the tensions that were there. Our ambassador being kicked out of America previously for his statements. This information that's circulating. The 49 tourists who went to the US posing as refugees. And unless all those things were dealt with in a setting such as today's, there was not going to be any meaningful engagement on AGOA. And remember, it's not just AGOA. America sits on critical institutions, IFIs, international finance institutions, where it can actually block South Africa's move to get funding, to do anything on the ground for the so-called poor person that Mr. Zungula is concerned about. For the poor person to actually get something from the government needs to ensure that the spaces where America sits and it has power and can block the government of South Africa from accessing finance, it prevents that from happening. How do you do that? You don't go there and be proud and raucous and noisy. You go there and you follow diplomacy. At this point, it was all about diplomacy. It was not a State of the Nation address in Parliament. He was not there to represent poor black people. He was there to represent South Africa as a whole, the white and the black. So he had to balance what was before him. He had to, in fact, it's not even true that he did not fire back at the misinformation. Each time Trump would stray and talk about genocide, President Ramaphosa would say, I believe that when we engage after this briefing, if President Trump will listen, he will understand where we're going with this. He will understand that no such thing exists. So he did, except perhaps the language he used was a language of diplomacy, not a language of a politician. But he did his part.
Now, well, let's take a look at a couple of WhatsApps. We'll start with this one. Witness sends a message that says, I'm deeply disappointed with AfriForum. Their actions do not promote nation building. Many people of all races supported the campaign against farm murders. Now it looks as if they have racialized this matter. Witness, thank you so much for sending that. From Togozani, saying AfriForum should be charged for tarnishing the image of our country. We never see this so-called genocide. It is in their mind. The main problem, they want to control black people, while, like during apartheid, we won't allow that. They need to grow. Enough is enough. Okay? Gobi says, good evening, Naledi. It's again another South Africa recolonization ploy where our leaders get invited to sell our country to imperialists. It's been clear that the plan for Afrikaners has worked, and they got the other races to join their hands and bully the black man into their own house again for another 1,000 years. Voga Africa. Gobi, we appreciate your input. Henson says, you see, what I'm concerned about with the White House meeting is that none of the alleged genocide pictures, like those of Gaza incidents, were played, or rather brought to the world's attention. Now let's continue to get more of this reaction. Mr. Galafing, I don't know, there's the question around what we need to then come back internally here at home and do. An analyst earlier said we need to have a conversation with AfriForum. What do we do with that, AfriForum earlier, as we spoke to Kali Kriel, not quite conceding to the question of whether or not they feel that they opened this can of worms, and that this meeting that we saw today was needing to clean up after all of that. So I'm keen to hear what you make of that. And then how this narrative of a genocide has gone so far that last week we were talking about AI, Grok, even starting to add on to the conversation. And my goodness, I mean, just how far a few, twisted perceptions can go. And then today, Elon Musk, quite silent in that meeting. What do you make of that, those two things?
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is Elon and Trump and their group have already succeeded in trying to plant that narrative. The challenge for South Africa is that we have not always been proactive. We have not always reacted speedily to this. We've always taken too much time and allowed this to fester and in many ways begin. But having said so, the rest of the world that knows South Africa knows this is a narrative which is far from reality as far as South Africa is concerned. And of course, as has been said, the president could have been much more decisive about it doesn't exist. Yes, AfriForum have played an incredible role in helping to drive this narrative. There are multiple trips back and forth to the US, speaking to third parties, speaking directly to Congress, speaking to everybody, have gone a long way of planting this anti-South Africa message. And I think as a country, it just goes to show that as a country, we are not actually all together for South Africa. The fact that you can have people who parade as patriots going out of the country and coming back, going out of the country to trash the country and come back so confidently, knowing that nothing's going to happen. That will never happen in America, by the way. That'll never happen, at least under Donald Trump, because he will definitely deal with an AfriForum of America if it did exist. Nowhere in the world with the kind of actions that AfriForum have taken will be acceptable. But we have accepted them because we are the country, quote unquote, that is quote unquote country that's forgiving, the country that reconciles, a country that always gives you the other cheek when you slap the other cheek. Is it a good thing? Yes, it's got its place. But on the other hand, it has really gotten us into trouble with where we are right now, because we have contributed as well as a people and as a country to this narrative of a South Africa that is not functioning as well as it could. Yeah. Yes, these discussions in the White House spoke a lot about the negatives, about the crime and about all those. To me, I'm not sure that's the stuff I would have taken to the White House. I would have done exactly what Trump does. I would have gone there with a few talking points. If you remember how Trump was, Trump arrived there with a few talking points. His primary talking points were thousands of Africans are being killed, and they're fleeing to Australia, and they're fleeing to America. We can't handle them. You have a problem. I can't single out a single talking point from South Africa. And also you had all those golfers who, as everybody has noted, all three of them said different things. Of course, Johann Rupert was much more aligned with the narrative that is correct, and a little bit of Steenhuisen as well. But generally, these are the people who didn't sit at home and caucus before the meeting and say, folks, let us go out there as South Africa. Let us go correct the narrative as South Africa. The way that AfriForum went out there, focusing on their narrow interests.
Can we sit with John Steenhuisen for a little bit? And Prof, I'll bring this one to you. When we saw on Sunday who was being brought in to travel with the president, those 4 ministers, one of them being John Steenhuisen, leader of the Democratic Alliance, Minister of Agriculture, male, white, so much of a big responsibility one would expect he has, really, as part of that delegation. Did he meet his mandate in that brief moment that he was given to speak? I mean, he did, of course, talk about how we are in this government of national unity to keep parties like the EFF and the MK party out of government. And then he even went as far as to say that, but we have continued to ask government to prioritize farm killings as something that needs to be addressed. Did he do the job?
No, actually, it came out more as a campaign for his party than speaking on behalf of the South African government. He needed to bastardize the EFF and bastardize MK and appear as the good guy who went in to assist the ANC to rein in what they call farm matters. And I totally fundamentally disagree with that term, farm matters, because in law, a matter is a matter. There's no highway matter, there's no studio matter, it's just a matter. So they cannot have a farm matter per se. So it doesn't exist. But then again, the changing of terms is synonymous with what the US is doing. You start with a false concept called a farm matter, you perpetuate it, it gets to the US takes it as genocide, just like it did with what it called in the past, the war on terror, which allowed it to go rampant all over the world, terrorizing people, traumatizing people, and torturing them. It is doing the same with the term genocide now. Now, Steenhuisen could have done more than he did today. For instance, the land issue. Steenhuisen is responsible for agriculture, but did he address the land issue? No. He could have done more. What he did was to take the space and campaign against his opposition, rather than him pushing the government narrative as a minister of government and as a white male who is supposed to be perhaps refugee number 59, I mean, number 50 out of the 49, but he's not. He did not necessarily do justice to that.
Yeah. Let's remind the viewer of what it was that Agriculture Minister and DA leader did say when given the opportunity to speak in that meeting between President Trump and President Ramaphosa.
It's going to require more policing resources. It's going to require a different strategy to be able to deal with it. But certainly the majority of South Africa's commercial and smallholder farmers really do want to stay in South Africa and make it work. And I've just come from the largest agricultural show in the Southern Hemisphere with organized agriculture and farmers, and the majority of them want to stay. But they too there have a memorial to those who've died as a result of farm attacks. And as the Minister of Agriculture, it is something that I'm particularly exercised with my colleagues at police and my colleagues in the justice cluster to start making farm attacks and stock theft a priority crime. And it affects all farmers in South Africa, particularly stock theft. It has a disproportionate effect on smallholder black farmers. The two individuals that are in that video that you've seen are both leaders of opposition minority parties in South Africa. Nkonto Wesizwe under Mr. Zuma, and the economic freedom fighters under Mr. Malema. Now, the reason that my party, the Democratic Alliance, which has been an opposition party for over 30 years, chose to join hands with Mr. Ramaphosa's party was precisely to keep those people out of power. We cannot have those people sitting in the union buildings making decisions. And that is why after 30 years of us exchanging barbs across the floor in Parliament and trying to get one over on each other, we've decided to join hands.
John Steenhuisen there. Mr. Galafeng, what do you make of that moment? I mean, I was watching that with bated breath Did he meet the mandate?
There's two parts to it. The first part, as the Prof said, it was a campaign speech about how much better the DA is and why they went into it and how bad EFF and MK, that's that part. But on the other half, actually, it was actually interesting and may even have been the strategy of, listen, concede a little bit about these farm murders and all those, and maybe use that language, because part of what you also wanted to do in this meeting with Trump was not to necessarily go there and say there is nothing happening. So I think Steenhuisen in that part, the other half of it, I think he did that very well, and to sort of accept, but not necessarily make a big deal about exacerbate the problem. So I think if he came out okay, except that, of course, as you saw in his Twitter and also his Instagram, to him this is a big gloating moment for him to show. To show that they are in the right. They always came to save South Africa, and they're going to do a better job than the other party. I guess if I were in opposition, I would do that. But of course, he shouldn't be in opposition in this instance. He is supposed to be representing the government of South Africa and speaking to one script. So from a messaging perspective, I think it may have been not such a bad idea, what he said about the murders, about working with my colleagues in police, my colleagues in the justice cluster. So that story, that worked okay for me.
Yeah. And just moments after John Steenhuisen spoke, then we saw this moment. South African billionaire Johann Rupert, who forms part of the business community representing South Africa, actively participated in the diplomatic engagements and addressed President Donald Trump on the recent tensions surrounding land reform as well as crime. Here's a reminder.
We need your help to stop this awful killing. But it's across the board. If we don't get our economy to grow, the culture of dependency and the lawlessness will increase. He marched on the farm.
But the crime is bad.
The crime is terrible, sir, but Mr. Steenhuisen won't admit to it, but he runs the Western Cape, where I live. And the biggest murder rate is in the Cape Flats. Gangs. We've got gang warfare. Like your M33, whatever these guys. We've got equivalents there, but we need your help, sir.
Oh, that was quite a moment, Prof.
Yes.
Johann Rupert saying, at some point he gestures towards John Steenhuisen and says, John Steenhuisen won't admit it, but the highest number of murders are coming from the Western Cape. What do you make of his contribution?
He was spot on. You see, Rupert Cape, I didn't trust what he was going to say. I thought he was just going to be all capitalist and nothing more. He was very, very sober. He says, for instance, when talking about the farm murders, so-called farm murders, that they happen across the board, meaning it's not just a target on white people. In fact, if you look at the last quarter of 2024, 2025, about 12 of these murders happened on farms, and only one was a white farmer, because they're security guards, because they're farm workers. And the narrative that farmer means white has been allowed to thrive. We're here because the moment you see a group of white males standing together at the back of a Toyota buggy, oh, those are farmers. No, our own grandfathers are farmers. We're here today because they fed us. We farm the land as we speak today. In those farms, our people still work on those lands. They get killed there as well. But Rupert took it even further and said, you come from the Western Province, which is the murder capital, if not of the world, where gangsterism is rampant, street gangs are killing each other. And those are not white people, but you're not mentioning it. So he did call him out there, which gives credence to the earlier criticism that as a minister in the government, he did not position his talk very well. But as an opposition leader, he pushed the narrative. He took that opportunity to actually place his party ahead of every other party.
Except he's no longer opposition. He's in the government.
He's in the government, yes.
Yeah.
But he can't shed off his former skin. That's the problem. Yeah.
Interesting. Mr. Galafeng, I see you nodding there, and you can give us your input on that. But just to stack some of these ideas, Prof talks about how, farmers doesn't necessarily mean white people. But I remember a particular moment when Donald Trump was saying, but most of your farmers are white. this is what's going on. I mean, there was someone from his delegation also talking about, well, if you lose all of them, you lose your economic stability. For me, that says there is a clear understanding of some of the inequality then in the country. I don't know how you made sense of that moment.
I think on the one hand, our team should have had their numbers together. They should have come in and been able to rebut some of these allegations with numbers, because Trump had this clear view: it's white farmers who are being killed. We couldn't rebut that with numbers, and we have the stats, we have the numbers. We can recite them the whole night here. I think that, to me, I think that was the one major flaw on our argument, on our strategy today. In addition to I mean, I agree with Rupert was excellent, but I couldn't stand the idea that both him and some maybe the president as well kept going with their cap in hand about we need you, we need you, we need you. No, we can't be speaking like that. We need to have a bit of dignity and a bit of pride as Africa. We cannot be going to America to go tell America that we have a crime problem. Only you can help us fix it. Well, America is not the world's nanny. We should have gone there to say, we have something of value that we can exchange with you, and instead of going to mortgage the country and trash it down.
Yeah. Then the playing of the video, and we're going to keep going back to that one because it was such a big feature of that meeting. The playing of the video showing Julius Malema singing Kill the Boer with what Trump described as a packed stadium that holds 100,000 people. Well, after that meeting, we, of course, did speak to the economic freedom fighters, a spokesperson, Snao Tambo, who says that they're proud of their leader, Julius Malema. He says it is racist to assume that people will take the chant literally.
We think it's a confirmation that the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Julius Malema, continues to be on the right side of history. So unlike others who are being praised for being charming and being mature in a patronizing manner by Donald Trump and Johann Rupert, the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF is being called out for chanting a song called Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer, which is directed to a system of oppression where a white minority controls the resources in the land of South Africa, while the black majority continues to be slaves at their behest. So I think it represents a genuine reason for us to be proud of a leader of an organization in South Africa that does not bend on principle. While Cyril Ramaphosa distanced himself from a chant which was developed by the ANC, distanced himself from a chant which was ratified as constitutional freedom of speech that should not be interpreted literally by the Constitutional Court of South Africa, the Commander-in-Chief and President of the Economic Freedom Fighters is being called upon to be arrested by an irrational, illiterate, racist President of the United States of America whose term can not come to an end anytime sooner. That song has been sung in numerous rallies of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Not a single white person has died after that song has been sung. I would have expected the South African delegation to make that point much more pointedly, not for them to try to mischaracterize the president of the EFF as a rebel, try to distance themselves and state that it's not government policy. That was not the question. Their role there should have been to educate on the non-existence of white genocide, on the metaphorical meanings of the song, its implications and its historical significance. They failed to do that and kept on capitulating, and that failure is something that must be frowned upon. I agree with Lindiwe Zulu that in times of attack of this nature, we should be able to unite and protect the sovereignty and dignity of our country and the history of our liberation. But the delegation led by the President of South Africa failed to do that, which is disappointing. The EFF will continue to sing this song, will continue to chant it wherever we deem it fit because it remains relevant in our context as we still see our economy and land monopolized by a white minority, and that system must be destroyed and it must be killed.
Yeah, Snao Tambo earlier speaking to us here on Newsfeed PM. Mr. Ikalafeng, let's throw the bones and say a month from now that we see the EFF singing or chanting once again.
I think what he's right about is we missed the opportunity to contextualize or to explain that rather than saying it's not government policy. Because by saying it's not government policy, you are implying that maybe it's a practice somewhere. Or it may seem to imply that it's a practice somewhere, but it's not policy. So we actually should have, he's correct when he says we should have contextualized it within history and said this is metaphor and this is not a literal meaning of the song. A month from now, will they sing it? Of course they're going to sing it. It's been their signature. I mean, EFF is a revolutionary movement, as we know, or at least that's how they position themselves. So they're always going to sing revolutionary songs or songs that harken back to the fact that perhaps the country isn't where it ought to be, or that the gains of freedom, the gains of 94 have not really materialized. So they'll keep singing those type of songs. Our job as a country is to explain ourselves to ourselves and to the rest of the world. We need to own our narrative. We need to own our story. We need to not wait for somebody to accuse us of something. We need to proactively be explaining the history of South Africa. The fact about songs like these, the court cases, explaining these should be in textbooks in schools. Our children should be knowing the history of the struggle. They should be understanding the meanings of such songs and everything else, so that everybody gets to understand how we got here and how we're going to go forward.
Yeah, the song is going to be a thing. I mean, I think about President Donald Trump when he talked about the song. He says, if anywhere in the world someone was caught singing, kill this group or that group, that something needs to be done about that. In fact, he then asks President Ramaphosa why that man is not in jail for singing that song. So we can certainly go on about, do you want to go in? Yeah, I'll give it to you, Mr. Kalafengo.
I was going to say, in America, they've got those things as well. In America, they've got people with swastikas, people with Ku Klux Klan, people, I mean, this happens. I mean, some of us have lived in that country and we go in and out of the country and we read about these things. We see how people are. It's in a way, what President Ramaphosa says, that's one of the marks of a democratic country, where you allow people to express themselves, as long as that expression does not lead to quote unquote a crime, because then can you deal with that matter? And I mean, that's how I look at it. As long as it doesn't result in criminal activity, disruption of the democratic state, then people should be allowed to do things like this. I mean, one of the biggest gains about this country's freedom from 94 onwards has been the ability to allow people to express themselves however way they want. That's the one big thing out of our constitution.
Yeah.
And it does not mean that if people express themselves in a certain way, like the songs, that it will lead to crime necessarily.
However, that's not necessarily the argument that was put forward by the team in that meeting. And Prof, perhaps you can take it here, because with the playing of the song, you certainly didn't hear the president saying the Constitutional Court has ruled that there is nothing wrong with singing the song, that it is, you know, a representation of the history that our country has. That argument was not put forward in that meeting.
Two things. The first one is, you are quite correct, and I support the view that Mr. Kalafeng is coming with, that this type of things happen everywhere, including the US. And Trump curated those videos. He doesn't even understand what was being sung there, except for the words kill. The rest of the lyrics he didn't understand, but he curated them to create the narrative that he wants. We could have pushed back even more by expanding the context of our history. That this has been challenged, because we're a democratic society, this has been challenged in the courts, and the courts have found that this is not meant in the literal sense. But the second point that the second takeaway from this, we need to ask ourselves, is the toy dead? In other words, how long are we going to be saying, kill the Boer, kill the what, and not come together as AfriForum did? AfriForum would never toy. They've done so in the past. Once or twice, they block roads. But they took their bags, took their passports, went across the pond, lobbied everyone, and today we're sitting here discussing the aftermath of the broad stroke that they just dealt us with. So when are we going to understand that, yes, these were liberation songs. They are part of our heritage, part of our history, they're important. But they are not magical. They're not going to make a white person run away from a farm and hand over the farm for free. We are not utilizing our power properly as black people. Somebody said, AfriForum is going around representing white people. Who's representing the black people? The president should have represented. That's wrong. The president was there to represent everyone. Black people should represent black people. Where is black civil society? All these black civil society organizations that are coming together and taking membership from black people, what are they using the money for? Why are they not litigating, strategic litigation? Why are they not challenging the actions of AfriForum, the actions of government, the actions of white farmers? We can sing these songs and praise Julius Malema for singing them for as much as we want. It's not going to bring change.
Yeah. Okay, let's move towards closing it off. And I think that what I want to do is now just expand it and go into what we come out of it. And I did ask this question earlier to my previous panel, but I think it's an important one. Where we leave Washington, D.C. in the hierarchy of geopolitics, if you will, Mr. Galafeng, November, G20, will President Cyril Ramaphosa hand over the presidency of the G20 to an empty seat? Or do you believe that he's managed to convince Trump? That's the first thing. And I do also want to bring this one in, because then you had President Cyril Ramaphosa talking about the time just recently when Zelensky was here in South Africa, and just before that, the 4 a.m. call with Donald Trump on the visit to Zelensky. But the president actually saying, our very own president, saying, I did say to Zelensky that when you want peace, it must be on an unconditional basis. An interesting choice of words there. So geopolitical hierarchy, where are we after that meeting?
I think in a funny way, we did shift a little today. In a funny way, we did. In an odd way, we shifted the needle a little bit. And I think, as I said in the beginning, how beautifully President Ramaphosa stroked Trump's ego by talking about how wonderful America was, setting up this great initiative, and he would love to hand it over. And you saw that smile and that glint in the eyes of Trump when he says, I want to hand this over to you. This great work that you did 20 years ago. So I think there will be American representation, and I think by the way Mr. Ramaphosa spoke to Mr. Trump, it gave Mr. Trump a bit of an opening to be able to relax his stance of saying we are not going. There's a bit of an opening, and with what you heard from Mr. Parkstow as well afterwards in the interview, in the post press conference, you could also tell that with what is being discussed in behind the closed doors, there may be an opening to relax, to reset, if you will, to reset the relationship between America and the U.S. So America and South Africa. Yeah. So I think there's going to be South Africa. There's going to be representation of some form, whether it will be Trump. But remember what President did? He gave him two options. He spoke about a state visit, and he spoke about the G20. So he gave Trump two opportunities to come and quote unquote see for himself South Africa, and finally to take over the presidency of the G20. I think something is going to come out of that. I think South Africa, despite what we've said in terms of our missed opportunities from a messaging perspective, we can always follow those up. We can follow those up beyond this meeting, with third-party endorsements, getting people, South Africans in the diaspora and elsewhere, to begin to amplify the story of South Africa, and in that way soften and explain who we are better, so that by the time November arrives, we are at peace with everybody in the world.
Yeah, all right. Prof, your final thoughts? The same question.
Yes. My takeaway from that is that I go home to sleep tonight knowing that as much as Trump has messed up the international relations system, he still has a little bit of respect for the multilateral system. The fact that going to the talk, the media was talking about the ICJ case against Israel. It did not feature. No matter how much they prompted him, he refused to enter that fray, because for now, he wants the legal system to take its course. And that is important for the space we find ourselves in. People thought that was going to be the rallying point, that and the 49 visitors who are now in the US fleeing from South Africa. But yes, quite a lot was done today. We saw the statesmanship and the diplomacy of our president. He did not go there as a politician would have, chanting and wanting to be seen as a mitre or a revolutionary. No, this was trade diplomacy. This was economic diplomacy. He did well. He managed to stand his ground. Each time Trump tried to push him off the center line, he came back as a but we're here to discuss the trade issue and how guys can invest in South Africa. So he did the best that he could. We can go here and there about what more could have been done. But remember, today was not the first and final moment of deliberations. They're still going to meet again going forward. So the path has been opened up because of President Ramaphosa's diplomacy.
Yeah. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for bringing us so close to midnight as we wrap up what is, I think, a day that will be remembered for a very long time, even beyond this very administration in both countries. Professor Angelo Dube, professor at the Department of Public, Constitutional and International Law, and Mr. Tembisa Fakude, who is, of course, not Mr. Tembisa Fakude, apologies for that. It's been a long night. Tebe Ikalafing of Brand Africa. And with that, we take a short break. We do have more news from the budget speech after this. Stay with us.